Okay, so are you really interested in growing apples, maybe some peaches, maybe some pears, maybe some other fruits at home? Well, then you will want to tuck in for today's episode because I have a very exciting interview to share with you this week. So I sat down with one of our horticulture agents from Cooperative Extension a couple weeks ago over Zoom, and we did a deep dive all about growing fruit trees at home, which I know a lot of you are interested in not only growing vegetables and herbs at home, but also incorporating some perennial fruits. And take notes because there is so much information tucked into our conversation. And I am just so excited to share this conversation with you all. As a reminder, for those of you who are brand new to this podcast, first of all, welcome. Super glad that you're here. My name is Erin Hostetler, and I am the owner of The Patio Farmer. And The Patio Farmer and myself are situated in the Piedmont of North Carolina. So I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we have pretty mild weather. We're in agricultural zone 8A. If this is a new term for you, an agricultural zone or a hardiness zone, then be sure to check today's show notes because I will put a link for you to learn more and to find what hardiness zone you live in, which can be super duper helpful when you're trying to figure out what kind of fruit or even any kind of food you're interested in growing at home. So be sure to check the show notes for that link. But as a resident of North Carolina, I sat down with one of my local extension agents. So you'll learn a lot more about extension and the different resources that are available no matter where in the U.S. you are. Every state in the United States has a cooperative extension. But here, I will just go ahead and give a little bit of a spoiler. Here in the Piedmont of North Carolina, it can be a little challenging to grow some backyard fruits, in particular our stone fruits and our palms. So if you listened to the episode of one of my Meet the Plant Family episodes that I did a few weeks ago, I'll put a little note in the show notes today to go back and listen to that. If you're interested in growing fruits, if you're interested in growing members of the Rosaceae plant family or the rose plant family. So I really wanted to take some time and sit down with our extension agent. His name is Sam. He's super great. You're going to love all the information that he has to share with you. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he has some guidance for us if we're interested in growing fruit at home. I don't want to spend too much time on the introduction today because we have such juicy content tucked into this interview. So let's just go ahead and get started. And I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Growing Space podcast. I'm your host, Farmer Erin, owner of The Patio Farmer, and I believe that no matter what size space you have, you can grow food at home. Tune in every Tuesday as I share my best tips, tricks, and encouragement for tending to homegrown edible plants. I'm here to support your food growing journey. The Growing Space podcast is sponsored by Plant Club by The Patio Farmer. Plant Club by The Patio Farmer is a monthly subscription service I started in 2020. It's a membership-based opportunity to take your growing journey to the next level. With 4 different membership options, you get to decide the amount and kind of support that's right for you. All Plant Club members receive access to my online community through a platform called Circle. Having access to this platform allows members to share pictures, ask questions, celebrate harvests, and get to know each other. All Plant Club members also have access to free seeds each month, along with information on how to plant and tend to their crops, with seeding instructions and downloadable resources from the Patio Farmers Resource Library. Membership starts at just $14 a month. Join Plant Club today by visiting my website, thepatiofarmer.com/membership. Hey, Sam, thank you for jumping on a call and chatting about fruit trees today. I am super excited for our conversation and to hear all of the things that you're going to share with us. I was wondering if you could start off with just introducing yourself and all the things that you do.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me, Erin. It's really great to be on here with you today. My name is Sam Humphrey. I'm originally from Jackson, Mississippi, born and raised. I'm currently in Charlotte, North Carolina, as the Horticulture Extension Agent here in Mecklenburg County with North Carolina Cooperative Extension. I am the Consumer Horticulture Agent. So that really means I primarily support homeowners and, all the community members in Mecklenburg County with any horticultural need, whether it's your home garden, your lawn, you've got, a disease or something going on with your trees, whatever horticultural issue you may have. I'm the guy that you talk to. I manage the Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Program in the county. I'm also the county pesticide coordinator and do all sorts of training and licenses for certified pesticide applicators. I coordinate the pesticide disposal day in the county. We just had a very successful one and got about 2,200 pounds of pesticides properly disposed of. Very, very proud of that. And I just really support all the horticultural needs in the county and within Cooperative Extension as far as our 4-H and family consumer sciences, all of our roles. I support all the needs and horticulturally. And then, I do support Mecklenburg County farmers as much as I can, though that's not a primary duty in my current role. But yeah, I'm trained in sustainable and regenerative agriculture. My specialties are in food crop production, poultry production, which is just one of my particular favorites, and also greenhouse and propagation. So anything in a high tunnel, a greenhouse, food crops, anything like that. That's what I do, and I love doing it.
So how did you get started with agriculture? Like where did farming enter your life?
That's a great question. So I originally started off in college at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And while I did enjoy aspects of being there, I wasn't really super happy with where I was at and where I was headed. And one day I went on top of the Flatiron Mountains with a friend and really thought about where am I at in my life. I had this realization that I just really wanted to learn how to grow food. And I thought that if I could learn how to grow food and I could feed it to unhealthy people, that might help lead them to have healthier bodies and healthier minds, which could lead us to having a healthier community, healthier society, and ultimately a healthier planet. And, really once that really clicked for me, I just went all in and decided to make a lot of changes and left Colorado and wound up farming at a farm in Tennessee, now called Pig and Leaf. I went to Warren Wilson College in Asheville, North Carolina, and studied sustainable agriculture there. And from there, went and raised poultry at White Oak Pastures down in Georgia. I left there and went to farm in Mississippi, where I supported an agricultural boarding high school called the Pineywood School right outside of Jackson. And then wound up starting my own farm in Jackson, Jackson's first regenerative urban farm, Fertile Ground Farms, and started that in 2019. And then this past year decided to make the pivot to come to Charlotte with my partner Rachel and start supporting the horticultural needs in Mecklenburg County with North Carolina Cooperative Extension.
That's quite the journey. And I feel like you and I had kind of a similar moment of realization that we wanted to get into food and helping other people either grow food or just understand more about the food system and the impacts of, growing sustainably and how it improves our own personal wellness, but also the planet's wellness as well. Thanks for sharing a little bit more about your story. So you had listed some of the services and resources that Cooperative Extension offers for the community. Could you just give us a little bit more information about the services for homeowners.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm going to start just kind of explaining what North Carolina Cooperative Extension is broadly, and then I'll get into what exactly Cooperative Extension does. So North Carolina Cooperative Extension is a partnership between North Carolina State University and North Carolina A&T. And that collaboration, that cooperation is, cooperative extension. And it's essentially the extension of the universities into all the counties in North Carolina. And so we do education within agriculture. So that would be food, feed, fiber, and forest systems. Also have a big focus on family health and nutrition. That would be with our Family and Consumer Sciences division. We also focus on positive youth development and leadership, and that's through the 4-H programs. And then we also have a big focus on just overall community development. North Carolina Cooperative Extension is focused on, raising up, supporting, and doing everything it can to help the folks in North Carolina. And for those who are not, your listeners who are not living in North Carolina, every state has land-grant universities that have some form of extension service. So if you're not in North Carolina, you have extension services in your area. As far as the homeowner resources, there's just a ton of resources available. We've got a lot of stuff online that, publications on all sorts of different subject matter, all sorts of handouts and resources. If you're focused on health and nutrition, food safety, 4-H has a lot of youth curriculum, and whether it's in the garden or STEM programming, robotics, technology, it really covers a very wide range. All the extension offices have a Master Gardener program. The Extension Master Gardeners are an excellent resource for homeowners because they, in basically every county, have a horticulture helpline where you can call or email any question that you have, horticulturally, and we have trained volunteers who are there to, answer your questions and help you get the resources you need. We also do provide soil testing resources and kits. You want to get the best start on your garden, or you're having issues with your lawn, or whatever it may be. We give out free soil testing kits and resources. And we give them out, and the Department of Agriculture is the one who actually does the testing and all of that. But we will give you the kits, help you understand what you got, and give you, recommendations based on those. And we'll also help connect you with grant opportunities and other university resources, such as the Plant Disease and Insect Clinic. So if you have a plant with a disease or an insect that it's just giving you trouble, you have no idea what it is, you don't know what to do about it, well, you can contact the PDIC. You can submit photos for free, and they'll get back to you pretty quickly. If you, need to send in samples and get more testing done, then contact your local extension agent, and they'll be able to help you with that resource and get it to you at a reduced cost. So really, extension does a lot, and do some research online. I think you'll be surprised at how many resources are available to homeowners and anybody living in North Carolina.
Just two things that you mentioned that I didn't know extension offered was resources around robotics and technology and ag. Like, that sounds really cool. And then I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I didn't know about the pest and disease clinic either. What a fantastic resource. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, the PDIC has, trained experts that all they do every day is, look at samples, look at pictures, and, they are just so great. If you have something you just can't figure out, your extension agent can't figure out, we always have the PDIC as a resource, and it's just so great to have.
If you're in North Carolina, what better than to use a expert source that's also based in North Carolina. And I would assume that the PDIC it doesn't just look at edible plants. Like, this would also look at like greenery, landscaping plants, trees, that sort of thing too, right?
Yeah, everything. If it, grasses, edibles, ornamentals, trees, they cover it all.
I will definitely be putting a link to that in today's show notes. So, what is your favorite thing that you get to do as an extension agent?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think for me, the my favorite thing is helping people and teaching them about, agricultural topics. I get a lot of satisfaction and joy out of, having somebody come to me with a question, something that's been a problem that they've been dealing with, and then I'm able to, do the research, figure this out for them, help bring them a solution. And then, when I hear back, these success stories of, oh my God, I did what you said and it totally rebounded, or, oh my, I did the soil test with you and your recommendations worked, and, or, oh my God, this, I had no idea what this bug was. And now, you've identified it for me, and, we can, address it properly. And, those kinds of things, to be able to get those success stories, to really see the impact, firsthand, that just really fills my cup. I love helping people with their questions, and also love teaching people. I've done a lot of things, been a lot of places, and so I just love helping spread that knowledge, and helping, teach people, what they need to know, and really meeting them where they are. I feel like in agriculture we can kind of get siloed, or folks, they kind of keep knowledge to themselves, when really I feel like it should be shared. I love just sharing knowledge and resources, and helping connect people with the earth, with their land, with the community around them.
That's a lot of why I do what I do too, and something that you said about meeting people where they are. I mean, that's always been like one of my core tenets just in the education and resources that I provide, is helping direct people and getting their questions answered in a way that's approachable and that they can implement either on their own, or, maybe alongside you at first. But yeah, that education and helping others. It's a good
It's
way
what
to
it's
fill your
all
cup.
about. Yes, what it's
That's
all
right.
about.
That's right. So, most of our conversation today is going to focus on growing fruit trees and sharing some tips and information for keeping them nice and healthy if we're growing them in our backyards, or, as the patio farmer, potentially growing them in some pots, big pots. But we're going to speak specifically about growing these in the Piedmont region of North Carolina, because that's where you and I are. And I'm curious, what are some fruit trees that are native to North Carolina? Growing native plants, in my experience, can be really, really beneficial for a multitude of reasons, but the hardiness and resilience, I think, is really helpful. So, yeah, what are some fruit trees that are native?
Yeah, so I totally agree with your comment on native plants. I think whether it's fruit trees, flowers, or grasses, we need native plants in our environment to provide ecosystem benefits and resources to wildlife that a lot of our ornamentals and plants that aren't native to our area, they just don't provide. They kind of are like statues in the environment. They look pretty, but they don't really do that much. And so when I'm making suggestions for folks, and really focused on environmental quality, I think that natives just really do so much. And I mean, we could have a whole podcast on why we should focus on natives and their benefits. I'm going to talk about some native fruit trees, and also some native nut trees. We think of fruit trees primarily, but there are a lot of nuts that are tree crops. And so some natives for North Carolina, I think a classic is our American persimmon. That is just a delicious fruit. You have the chinkapin nut, which is very similar to the American chestnut, another great native tree. The red mulberries are another good native fruit tree. I would imagine a lot of folks have never had a mulberry before. I know I hadn't until I was on a farm in Tennessee, and really got to experience those fresh, and those are absolutely delicious. Pawpaws are another great native fruit tree. A lot of people haven't ever tasted a pawpaw before, and I like to describe them as kind of like a mango and a banana that just, so on that the kind of tropical flavor, but then, does have a bit of a grittiness to it. They're a very seasonal fruit. They don't have a long shelf life. So a lot of people process them into different things, chutneys and sauces and whatnot. They're great to eat fresh, but something if you haven't tried, I'd suggest to find it when those start to come into season. Also, the Chickasaw plums. Plums are great, fruit trees that everybody knows, but those Chickasaw plums are native to North Carolina, sweet and delicious, going to be a little bit smaller than the plums that you're used to, similar to the American persimmons. If you have seen normal, the Japanese persimmons, Asian persimmons, the American ones are going to be a little bit smaller, similar to how the Chickasaw plums will be a little bit smaller than your average plum. And then lastly, black walnuts, great tree crop. They don't like playing with others, so to speak. They have the black walnuts have allelopathic properties where they are very selective about what plants they want to grow around. We have a lot of great, good native tree crops in North Carolina, just to name a few.
I did not know that about walnuts, that they are particular about their neighbors, or the black walnut in particular. And for mulberries, for people who haven't tasted a mulberry, they're delightful and very similar to like a blackberry or raspberry, but grow on massive trees. So you get so much more production off of one mulberry tree than you do from, well, I guess if you have really established blackberry vines, they could give you a run for your money there. But what are some of the benefits of planting these native fruit trees in our yard?
Yeah, well, again, they're going to provide a lot of ecosystem benefits that your ornamental trees aren't going to provide. We aren't really crazy about caterpillars, especially when they're eating on, our vegetable crops in our garden or some of our plants in the yard. But ultimately, these natives are incredible resources for caterpillars and for pollinators. And maybe thinking, why do I care about caterpillars? Why would I want to support caterpillars and have them eating on some of my native plants in my environment? Well, those caterpillars, a lot of the native ones, there's just slews of them. They are very particular about the plants that they eat, and those particular caterpillars are also important food source for a lot of the birds in our ecosystem, in our environment. And if you want birds around your property, you want birds nesting on your property, you have got to have the caterpillars to be able to support those birds. And if they aren't there, you are not going to get the birds on your property. You are not providing those resources. So when we're selecting our landscape plants, would you want to select an invasive like a Bradford pear that's just going to cause problems and issues and not really provide a lot of ecosystem services for your environment? Or you want to choose one of these native trees that are actually going to be ecologically beneficial and really support the environment around us? I think it's important for folks to understand that certain choices will, you are either providing ecosystem benefits and services or you are not with the selections that you are making.
Yeah, totally. And one of my main cornerstones or things that I'm always sharing with clients and with others is that whenever we're growing plants, we are creating an ecosystem. Kind of piggybacking off what you were saying is you get to choose the type of ecosystem that you want to create or that you want to foster around you and in your space. Plants are just one tiny part of those ecosystems. There are also bugs, caterpillars, birds, wildlife, deer, there's tons of different components that come with the ecosystem. Besides native fruits, what are some other fruit trees or nut trees? I'm happy to expand this to include nut trees that grow well in our region.
The trees that are going to be well adapted to North Carolina and our region, we're talking apples, and again, when I say this, there are specific cultivars for these that will do well in our area. There are some that won't. So I just want to preface this that, you have to select the right cultivar for our area. That'd be the right variety, the right kind of apple that is going to be adapted to your area. There's a lot of differences in varieties, and there's a lot of resources available through NC State and Extension about those. I'm not going to get into many of those selections, but I just want people to know that you have to choose the right variety of these trees to do well in your area. So as I said, apples generally do well in our region, chestnuts, figs, nectarines, peaches, pears, pecans, persimmons, and plums. But also got to understand that some are going to be fairly low maintenance, some are going to be kind of moderate maintenance, and some are going to be very high maintenance. And so when you're making those selections, you also have to understand how much maintenance and time and effort are you willing to commit to be successful with these tree crops, because certain ones they're just going to be high maintenance and you're going to have to deal with it. Some are not going to be, as suited for organic production. Some are going to be fairly low maintenance. And so again, you have to understand how much are you willing to dedicate to be able to the success of these trees? Because if you're not ready to, take care of those high maintenance apples and pears and peaches and plums, then maybe you should go more for, a fig or persimmon or, pecan, something that's, going to be a little bit easier for you to manage.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on as a guest is because I get asked all the time about planting apple trees, peaches, pears, and people really want to have fruit growing in their backyards, which I mean, I can't blame them because it's pretty magical to be able to go out in your yard and pick a fresh piece of fruit to enjoy. But those are some of the more high maintenance fruit trees in our area. So could you just give us I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 things to keep in mind about growing peaches, pears, apples at home?
The peaches, pears, apples, plums, cherries, these stone fruit and pomes, they are just very challenging to grow in the South. With our warm and humid conditions, it just makes their management and success just a lot harder. And it can be done, but you have to really commit a lot of time and energy, and this is intensive maintenance to be in management to be able to be successful with these tree crops. It starts with the foundation of your soil, and then choosing the correct varieties that are going to be in your desired location that will do well and thrive there. You have to choose varieties that are going to be resistant to diseases that are in your area and that are very common, and that are going to have pest resistance as well. You can get a lot of these trees that are grafted, which can help set you up for success. So that would be where you get a root stock that has a very good disease resistance package, and you would cut that, and on top of it put a cultivar, a variety that you actually want to eat. And so you wouldn't eat what was coming off the rootstock, but you get those disease benefits and the good quality fruit that you want. You have to start with the right site, the right soil, the right cultivar, the right variety to set the stage for success. Then let's say you've done all of those things. You're still going to have to prune these trees annually. You're still, you're going to have some sort of spray program, some sort of disease prevention program, because like apples, they're one of the more challenging crops, and they have a lot of diseases they're susceptible to. So you're going to have some sort of pesticide regimen, some sort of disease prevention regimen, whether that's organic or conventional. Pears are going to be a little bit easier to grow than apples, but again, you still have fire blight to contend with, a disease that is going to just decimate your trees. So if you're selecting a pear variety, you have to get one that has fire blight resistance, or you will just not be successful. Peaches and nectarines, plums, those stone fruit, They are very challenging to grow, even more so than apples, and require a very intensive disease management program. You really have to, really focus on, all these different problems from scale and aphids that can, these insects that can affect the crop, to all these diseases from brown rot to, bacterial spot. Peaches in particular have several diseases that are very specific to them. So, you really have to be very conscious about how you are managing these. These are not trees that you just set and forget. If you want trees that you're just going to set and forget, then, you might need to be, going more for those figs, some of those persimmons. And then even kind of stepping back, small fruits. So I know I'm not talking about this today, but like blueberries, I would not consider them a tree crop. But if you want something you can just kind of set and forget that do well in North Carolina, blueberries are going to be a much better choice than, apples or peaches or pears. And frankly, I think people should also kind of do a cost benefit analysis of the time and money and resources that are going to have to go into these trees versus being able to go buy that particular fruit, at a local farmer's market, from a local orchard, or even at the grocery store.
Yeah, I think that that's really great advice and really great framing for people who are interested in taking on these fruit trees. These are delicious fruits, no doubt, but is it really going to be worth your time and energy? Sometimes it's fun to just see how things grow, whether or not you get a high yield or not. It's just fun to watch things grow. But there are lots of challenges that come with these fruits. And that's typically, my recommendation to people who ask me about them is to just frame it up with like, well, you're going to have some issues along the way. It's kind of a given. And maybe like a fig or a blueberry would be a good place to start. And then if you want to take that on, you can.
Yeah, I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say, I think, baby steps. I think it's great to,
Yes.
to get people to, you got to start somewhere. So if you're going to,
Right.
you want to set that foundation, you want to get growing, you want to start somewhere, start with something easy. Get a win under your belt before you really start opening yourself up to a lot of these challenges that, farmers and agriculture professionals face. That, it's something that, the trained professionals have to deal with, and be conscious of, and they're going to have problems. So as a homeowner, a novice, untrained, person, it's like, well, why not help set yourself up for success and start with something a little bit easier? And as you kind of get your legs under you, then you can really start opening yourself up, start experimenting, start challenging yourself. But it's something, probably want to wait till you have a little bit of experience in before you really start jumping in. And there are some fruit, some trees that I don't really recommend, that aren't very common in North Carolina and just don't really do well, that some of your audience may be interested in. As far as stone fruit, your
Yeah.
apricots and your cherries. I know I love sweet cherries, but they just do not do well here. Apricots as well, just don't do well here. And a lot of your tropical or kind of semi-tropical fruits as well, bananas, great ornamental, but you're not going to get anything off of those. Your citrus, in Mississippi, we had a lot of satsumas and those oranges, but here in North Carolina, we don't really have the environment for that. Those are more zone 9, zone 10. We're zone 8, right? Here. So kind of a push for us. And then another one that I really love that just doesn't do well here are pomegranates.
Yeah, the citrus. I have a lot of clients who have citrus at home, but in big pots that you then have to move indoors in the winter and then back outside. I will say that there's no smell that beats a fresh like lemon flower. It is just the most magical thing.
Yeah, and
Um,
you're right that if folks, can put them on their patio and are able to bring them into protected conditions, then you can be successful with some of these. But you've got to be able to pull them in and protect them, and kind of
yeah,
have these extra management steps.
yeah, totally. Let's talk about pollination. So, does it matter how many plants, how many fruit trees we plant to get successful pollination?
Yeah, it does. And so if you want to really get an ample harvest, you're going to have good fruit set. And really the way that happens is with cross-pollination of cultivars. And even, there are a lot of fruit crops that and fruit trees that are, self-fertile, they're self-fruitful. They can, don't necessarily need cross-pollination to be successful. That would be like peaches, nectarines, figs, and persimmons don't necessarily need another cultivar to be, or that's cross-pollination to be successful. But like apples, pears, plums, and a lot of fruit trees really require this cross-pollination from at least two cultivars. What that means is you got to have two different varieties in close proximity that are going to bloom at the same time. You know, are going to have that overlap, because if those blooms don't line up, they're just not going to be pollinated properly. And by having trees that bloom at different times, you can extend your harvest. And so you can plan it so that you have early, mid, and late season cultivars that bloom, at those times and together, so that you're then able to get this cross pollination. So you get a much better fruit set. You have a better harvest. But you can also extend your harvest by planting these different varieties.
We've talked a little bit about fungus, and I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is one of the main concerns, or like main points to be looking out for in terms of long-term maintenance on our fruit trees. What are like some of the most common? I know you've mentioned the fire blight on pears. What are some of the common fungal diseases? And if you have any resources, maybe that have pictures that you might want to point people to.
Yeah, happy to. So it's going to depend upon what type of tree you're talking about, as far as what disease, fungal, bacteria, whatnot is going to affect that fruit tree. So like fire blight, as we've mentioned, that's a bacterial disease that's spread by bees during bloom, and this includes apples and pears, anything in that family, and much more. And this fire blight, you will know it when you see it, because it looks like somebody burned your trees. I mean, it really looks just nasty and gross, and looks like, literally somebody kind of burned your tree. And so, these fire blight is very destructive, and one that you really need to be selecting cultivars that have the disease package and resistance to them. If you see it on your trees, then you need to start cutting that off and really taking steps so that it doesn't spread. And you can, for homeowners, there are some fungicidal copper products that are available to you, but they can be difficult to time and apply effectively. So for homeowners who are dealing with fire blight, you really have to set yourself up with that good tree, that good cultivar on a disease-resistant rootstock. Otherwise, you just don't really have a lot of options available to you. Brown rot is a really common and really problematic fungus that affects stone fruits. So we're talking, the peaches, plums, cherries, apricots, nectarines. It occurs during the bloom and it'll kill the blossoms, and then it comes back after a few weeks before harvesting the right fruits. The fruit will rot on the tree and turn brown and get soft and moldy and really gross. If you want to prevent a lot of your fungal diseases, it's really important that you are pruning the trees in a way that will improve their airflow. And you want to make sure that you're avoiding overhead watering to really keep the foliage dry. Preventative maintenance and management of your trees is what really helps set you up for success. You also have a bacterial spot, which is a bacterial disease on peach trees that gives you these irregular lesions on the leaves and on the fruit. You have powdery mildew, which is a whitish gray powdery mold that'll grow on the buds, on the young leaves, on the twigs. And I could keep going. I mean, we have peach leaf curl, peach scab, apple scab fungus, cedar apple rust. If you notice, a lot of those are apples and peaches, and these diseases are, centered around the pomes and the stone fruit. And this is kind of why we are tending to lean your audience away from some of these, or at least let people know that these are going to be much more challenging because there's a lot of different diseases, a lot of different things that can occur.
In terms of treating or preventing disease, we want to make sure that we're giving our plants plenty of space, pruning them to increase ventilation and access to sunlight, watering, trying to water right at the base of the plant or like the trunk of the tree and not over the leaves if possible, and then being proactive in using some of those preventative sprays or treatments. I do want to talk a little bit about pruning, but as you were speaking, I wanted to follow up with another question around cultivars. So if people are shopping for a fruit tree, they're really dedicated, they want peaches, and they're trying to find the best cultivar. Is that something that is easy to discern if you're like at a plant store and you're looking at a plant tag? Is that something that you can discern from the plant tag itself, or is that something that you would probably want to do research on ahead of time? Just kind of walk us through the best ways to identify a good cultivar.
Yeah, happy to do that. So finding the right cultivar is something that you have to do your research on. When you go to any plant store, especially some of these larger stores, they're just selling you what they got and what's available. A lot of times that they can be adapted to your area, but you're generally not going to find these, specific cultivars unless it's a specialized nursery that, is able to produce those and focus on those. And so, I think generally this is something you're going to want to do your research on. And NC State has a lot of good resources and publications, within their plant toolbox. So the plant toolbox, you can search any plant, whether it's fruit tree or otherwise. It'll give you all sorts of history, characteristics, growing practices, recommendations, all those types of things. You can look those up, as well as in all of the comprehensive resources for fruit trees that is on the NCSU website, or there's our North Carolina Master Gardener textbook is actually available online for free for folks. And chapter 15 goes over fruit and nut trees. And within that chapter and within a lot of these publications, they list specific cultivars that are adapted to North Carolina, to the Piedmont area, and then they will list in a lot of charts, they will have, these are your fire blight resistant ones, these are your brown rot resistant ones, and then it's up to you to then do your research locally, and then you find it, and then you can plant it. And then your grafted trees as well, as I was talking about, you can get one of these cultivars on a rootstock that can then, kind of double up on your disease resistance package. And those are going to be a little bit harder to find, but on the NCSU website around these fruit trees, they have resources on where you can actually source these trees. So there are North Carolina nurseries all around the state, and then there's some in the southern region where they have listed on the website, and you're able to go and, these are the kind of places you would find those cultivars in these, really, these more specialized commercial nurseries that are intentionally growing these trees and doing a really good job versus going to one of the big box stores and doesn't have the disease package that you need.
That's great advice, and good to know that something That's something that you should do ahead of time and not just spur of the moment, go shopping for your fruit trees. When it comes to pruning, and I mean, pruning, I'm kind of obsessed with pruning. I think it's so much fun. And mainly because each plant is like its own unique little puzzle. And there's a lot of intuition that comes with pruning, which is something that sometimes can take practice. The benefits of pruning are increasing the airflow and access to sunlight and reducing pest disease issues. But at a high level, like, what are one or two tips to keep in mind when we are pruning our fruit trees? Like, when is the best time to prune? And how do you know what you should be cutting?
Great questions. And just for those of you at home, there's a lot to pruning, and through NC State, there are a lot of resources and publications, videos that go into, diagrams of exactly, what you should prune, how you should prune it. There's a lot of videos, a lot of resources, and I'll make sure that we have links to those in the show notes so that everybody can access those and really see firsthand what that looks like in practice. As far as what the best time to prune your fruit trees, for most fruit trees, you're going to want to do it in the winter months when those trees are dormant. You do not want to be pruning them when they're active and growing. You would do that kind of mid-January into February. And with some of your stone fruit, you do that a little bit later. So that would be kind of February to early March. I think if there's one thing people take away, it's prune your fruit trees in the wintertime when they're dormant. Pruning is important, but we also want to kind of touch on training the trees as well, because both training and pruning are really important to the success of your tree. And so when the trees are young, they can handle a lot more stress. You can prune a lot more on a young tree than you can on an older tree. The more you prune on an older tree, the more detrimental that is going to be to that tree. Training is generally within the first 5 years after the tree's been planted, and we're training them when they're young so that they can maintain the shape and structure when they get older to bear fruit and be able to handle that fruit. And so that would be, taking selective cuts to encourage branching in specific areas and encouraging different crotch angles. So that would be the angle that the branches are sitting so that they can bear heavy loads of fruit. And you want to, we've been talking about light, and, we got to encourage light distribution in these areas as well, because the fruit production requires light. When you are, training, we're talking, there's generally two different types of training that you would do. You do a central leader system, and that's where you kind of train your tree to have kind of that Christmas tree shape. You have one main trunk, one main leader, and this is for tree fruit that bear fruit on the branch ends, like your apples and your pears. You also have an open center system where you train them and cut them so that they don't have a central leader, but it's so that center is open in the center of the trees very early on. And that's, for the fruit trees that bear fruit along the branches. That would be a lot of your stone fruits, like your peaches and nectarines. When you're pruning on a central leader system, you will, you want to select one that's going to be a straight main trunk. And then you are pruning and kind of creating these scaffold branches around the tree. So essentially you want to cut all the branches that are pretty low on the base of that tree. You want to make sure, especially at the base of the tree, you're going to have airflow, similar to how you would prune the leaves of your tomato plant, so that you make sure that has airflow on the bottom of it. You also, when you're pruning the branches, you want to do it so that they are evenly spaced, and they have, like, from a top down view, it kind of looks like the spokes of a wheel, so to speak. You don't prune them so that they are kind of opposite each other. You want to at least have like a foot or so, 18 inches to 2 feet between these branches, so that you are, again, encouraging airflow, encouraging this light distribution. You're not overcrowding the tree. And, again, you are managing it for this desired shape. And depending upon what kind of tree it is, you'll want to choose one of these methods. But generally with your pruning, you want to keep it clean, and make sure you have like 4 to 5 main branches that are going to be supporting the fruit that you want to grow. And you're removing any vigorous shoots, any of these additional shoots, especially in the winter time. And during those first 3 to 5 years, you are just managing the shape of this tree. You're not really going to get a ton of fruit set. But, again, this is a long-term play. So what you do early on is really going to matter down the road to, again, you are trying to set yourself up for success. And if you want to learn more about how to prune and where to prune, and look at some examples of, okay, I've got a tree with all these different branches, which ones do I select and choose? There's a lot more information on the NCSU website and videos, and again, all these things that can really help people, give you these diagrams and see it firsthand. And last point I just want to touch on is, when you're pruning, you need a really sharp pruning tool. And you don't want to be creating these dull kind of, mangled edges when you're cutting. You want them to be clean. You want them to be sharp, and you want to make sure you're sanitizing it, as you're moving tree to tree, so that you're not spreading disease. There's more information on exactly how you cut and the angles, but ultimately, you want to do it in a way that's going to make it easiest for the tree to cover that wound up and protect itself. So keep those pruners clean, keep them sharp, and make some good clean cuts, and do it at the right time. And, that'll ultimately help set you up for success.
Those are great points. And as you were talking, you were mentioning that fruit trees are, we're in it for the long haul with our fruit trees, and that 5 years is really kind of, just a small portion of the lifespan of a fruit tree. I feel kind of bad that I haven't mentioned this already, or that we haven't talked about this already in this episode, but, fruit trees take a while to produce fruit, usually about 3 years, right? Some trees, some varieties take even longer than that. And, 5 years, 6 years. I mean, this is when the tree is still pretty young. How old do like peaches and pear trees get? I mean, decades.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple decades. I mean, I think on average, you could expect some of those trees to, be around for 15, 20 years, something in that range. But depending upon the tree, the site conditions, and your management practices, that can either be shorter or longer. We are ecosystem managers. We're either setting them up for success or for issues and for failure. And just something I want to also mention with fruit trees and just trees in general, you really want to mulch these trees with a nice hardwood mulch. And when you're mulching, we don't want to see volcano looking mulch, where it really gets higher and higher as you get closer to the base of the trunk of that tree. It might look nice and people think it's good to really pile it on, but when you pile that mulch on so close and so thick to the trunk of that tree, it encourages the roots to then grow up and around the tree, and it can kind of girdle, kind of strangle itself. And so when we suggest people mulching their fruit trees, you want to keep the grass away from them. Most of your tree roots are going to be in that surface layer. They're not deep tap roots, and so you want to keep grass away from them. So you want to mulch them. You want to use a good hardwood mulch. And you want to keep that mulch at least 3 inches or so away from the base of that trunk. And you can go like 3 inches thick, but it'd be better to go thick and wide versus, again, that volcano style mulch. And you can mulch all the way to the drip line of your tree. So as far as those branches extend, that's generally as far as those roots are extending. So you can, you can mulch it all the way to that drip line if you so desire. And, I've seen big giant trees mulch, I mean, they got feet and feet of mulch all around these giant trees. So, and they're doing great. And so, just want to make sure I touch on that. And when you want to, fertilize those trees, do it, pull that mulch back and top dress it. You always do it from the top down. So if you do have a mulch or something around your trees, pull that back, do your fertilization, put the mulch back.
That's really helpful with the mulching. And I'm glad you brought that up because mulching has so many great benefits. Well, we are nearing the end of our conversation in the episode today. 2 questions that I like to ask all of my podcast guests towards the end of the episode are, well, we'll start with the first one. So what is your favorite vegetable and why?
Yeah, my favorite vegetable is the Hakurei turnip.
Really?
That's the Japanese salad turnip. I call them sweet turnips. They are super easy to grow, great to eat the roots or the leaves. They differ from the purple top turnips that can be, very common in southern agriculture and southern homes. But unlike the purple top, they don't get so big, they don't get really hard. You don't have to cook them to eat them. I think they're great to eat raw in a salad. You can bite right into them like an apple. My favorite way to cook them is to just saute them in a pan with some butter, and they'll kind of caramelize like an onion would and get really soft and sweet. And then those greens, you can eat them fresh on a salad. They're not bitter. The turnip is not bitter. That's why I call it a sweet turnip. And, you can cook them up just like you would normal turnip greens. You're just not going to have that bitterness to contend with. And when I was farming in Jackson, they were one of my top crops, top sellers, crowd pleaser. I'd stack it high, watch it fly, and just really one of my favorite crops to grow. Just easy, resilient, tasty. I mean, I can go on and on, but the Hakurei turnips are my favorite.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And they grow fast, right?
Yeah, they're gonna, you can get a harvestable turnip in about 30 to 40 days. They're one of the quickest. I mean, I think the only other thing would be like microgreens or radishes that could outcompete them in terms of timing. But those turnips, I've grown them spring, summer, fall, winter. They can handle, fairly cold temperatures, just easy to grow, very resilient, quick. They're beautiful. I love eating them. I love growing them. They're great.
Yeah, there's nothing like pulling a root vegetable out of the soil. It's like magic. This is the other question that I like to ask all of my guests. What is the most important thing that you have learned, either as an extension agent or just someone who grows food?
Yeah, so when we kind of touched on it earlier, I think for me, the most important thing that I've come to know as an extension agent, as a farmer, just as a individual in the world growing food, or just being a human being, is just no matter what you believe, whether you're on the organic regenerative side, you're more conventional side, you got to meet people where they are and support them as they need it. My primary focus is to help people build resiliency into their agricultural systems, into into their gardens, into their spaces, into their lives, and I don't want to, I provide resources to folks, but I don't want to build dependency on me or the institutions. I want people to, know for themselves and have that resiliency in their lives and be able to, think and grow and make and make decisions, but informed decisions. And so I'm just I want to set people up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. As we close out, can you just give people a heads up or let people know where they can find more information about extension and the services? And then maybe if you also want to share your big news and your transition that you have coming up as well. And yeah, any information that you would like to share with that
Yeah,
too.
happy to share all that information. So if you're interested, if you're in Mecklenburg County, I encourage you to visit our county cooperative extension website. That would be mecklenburg.ces.ncsu.edu. That is our Mecklenburg County main website for our county center. You're going to find events and information, resources, all those different things. If you're not in Mecklenburg County, your county has a website and homepage, so you can just Google that, and I know that you'll find it. You can give us a call at 980-314-1402. That is our main phone line. So if you want to connect with anybody at our office, that's the main line that you would use. I'd also encourage people to check out the Extension Master Gardener website for us in Mecklenburg County. And that is just Master Gardeners with an S, mastergardenersmecklenburg.org. And so that is our county Master Gardener website. That's where you can submit gardening questions, any horticultural questions you have. The Mecklenburg County Extension Master Gardeners are currently at several different local farmers markets whenever they happen. So that would be the Charlotte Regional Market, the Davidson Market, the Matthews Market, the North Mecklenburg Community Market, the Cotswold Market, the South End Market, and the Camp North End Market. They've got booths set up there. Almost every time that those markets happen, there will be a Master Gardener presence, and you can come talk to them and they will answer your questions and help you with whatever you need. We don't claim to know everything, but we sure can, do the research and get you the right information to suit you. As far as a bit of an update from me that you alluded to, Aaron, I am sharing some bittersweet news. I will be transitioning from North Carolina Cooperative Extension here in Mecklenburg County and be shifting to a new role with Charlotte Country Day School as their Weddington Farm educator. It's just a really great opportunity that I just couldn't pass up, and I'm really excited to begin working with them, building out the farm property there in the Weddington Waxhaw area. We're going to be really focused on education for all the Charlotte Country Day students, as well as doing events and programming for the community. So I'm just really excited to be joining them and joining that team. But it is bittersweet for me because I've really enjoyed my time working with Extension and with the Extension Master Gardener program. And I will still be doing some partnerships with them in my new role with Country Day. So I'm just really excited for what's ahead, and I'm really thankful for the opportunities that have been provided to me, and I'm still very dedicated to supporting the food systems and food justice work and initiatives. And just really want to thank you, Aaron, for having me on here today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I really look forward to talking with you again sometime soon.
And thank you so much, Sam, for hopping on and talking to us about fruit trees and just sharing some more resources about extension, master gardeners, all of the amazing resources that you all have. And I'm sure we'll see each other again soon.
Oh, I know we will. I know we will.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation that I had with Sam and all of the valuable knowledge, information, considerations that he had to pass along about growing fruit trees at home in our climate. And even if you don't live in Zone 8A or in the Piedmont of the Carolinas, I am pretty confident that there was information tucked into this episode that will be helpful to you and your growing practice as well. Now, next week, I am going to be sharing 7 super summer seeds. Yep, y'all know I love an alliteration. But I'm going to share 7 different crops that love to grow in the summertime and the warm months that are really wonderful additions to our growing spaces for several different reasons. It could be that they grow really quickly in the summertime. It could be that they are a beneficial plant that helps to ward off a certain pest, or maybe they help attract a certain kind of beneficial insect. It'll be a little bit of a shorter episode, but insightful and informative nonetheless. And if you have listened to this podcast in the past, then you will know that at the end of every episode, I like to share kind of a fun little fact, a fun little tidbit, morsel of information to send you on your way. And this week, I am sharing an update from my pollinator calendar. So again, for repeat listeners, you'll know last Christmas, my partner Marshall gifted me a calendar, and every month I learned about a new pollinator. So May's pollinator is the hoverfly. And I've always been a big fan of the hoverfly. They are fantastic pollinators. They look kind of like a bee or a wasp. So a lot of times we get them confused for something else, but they use their mimicry to evade predators, which is really cool. And they do a fantastic job pollinating our plants, just like the bees. Pollinators are responsible for 72% of our global food supply, y'all. Without them, our food system would not survive. Hoverflies are great pollinators for fruit trees as well. Orchards benefit from having them visit their different trees. Also, with the hoverfly, one of their favorite pollen-filled snacks is a flower called Sweet Alyssum, which is one of my favorite companion plants. It is a delightful little flower that is edible and smells super sweet, almost honey-like. So Sweet Alyssum forms clusters of small white flowers. And the little clusters are really beautiful as they kind of cascade and fold over the side of a container. Maybe a little extra tidbit for you there. If you are staging a container and you want to attract more pollinators or maybe even a hoverfly to your space, then plant some Sweet Alyssum because they really do love that flower in particular. And another fun fact about the hoverfly. So while the adults do feed on the nectar of flowers, their babies, their little larvae, eat aphids, which is fantastic news. No offense, aphids. So there you go. It's an extra bonus. Pollination and aphid predation. Thank you again so much for tuning into this week's episode, and I will see you again next week for the 7 super summer seeds. Y'all have a good one. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the Growing Space Podcast. I hope that you learned something new and that you were able to take this new information home with you and implement into your growing journey and into your growing space. As always, I am here to support you and your food growing journey. If you'd like to learn more about the different services and resources and membership programs that I run through The Patio Farmer, please check out my website, thepatiofarmer.com. You can also follow me on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and oh my gosh, most recently, TikTok. Wow. I know. Here I am. Patio Farmer is on TikTok. It's very exciting. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like or a rating or a review if you want. Maybe share a little comment about your favorite part of the episode. Share it with a friend. The more interactions I get with my little podcast online, the more I'm able to help people just like you in their food growing journeys. As always, thanks for being here, and I will see you again next week.